The lawsuits, the land, and the rumors no one expected. The night is unnervingly still. A sudden crack of emergency radio static slices through the darkness, followed by flashes of blue lights bouncing between towering trees. A ranger moves slowly along a dirt road, his flashlight cutting into the woods that most people would never dare to enter. 1 minute ago, Eustace Conway finally broke his silence. And what he revealed about the lawsuits, the investigations, and the land he nearly lost changes everything you thought you knew about mountain men. Old newspaper clippings slam onto the screen. Zoning threats, county documents, heated letters from neighbors. A map fades in over Turtle Island Preserve, its borders outlined in stark white, the same borders that fueled years of disputes. Rumors swirl like smoke. Property lines contested by frustrated neighbors. Claims that Eustace's untraditional buildings broke codes. Hikers who went missing miles from his land, yet somehow the internet still dragged Turtle Island into the conversation. These stories were never proven, never tied to Eustace, but they spread anyway, carried by gossip, fear, and online speculation. In the modern world, truth crawls, but rumors sprint. Shots of social media threads, blurry photos, dramatic thumbnails, and small-town chatter flicker by like a wildfire. Every rumor adds fuel. Every exaggeration becomes another weight on his shoulders. And then, silence. Blue lights fade. The woods return to darkness. Wind moves through the trees like a warning. He didn't walk away from mountain men because he wanted to disappear from TV, but because the life he fought to protect was being threatened from every direction. A final beat. Cold, still, heavy. And tonight, you'll hear the moment Eustace finally admitted why he had no choice but to leave. Eustace Conway's story didn't begin with fame, or cameras, or conflict. It began in the quiet corners of the American wilderness, long before the world ever learned his name. As a child, while most kids spent summers in air-conditioned rooms, Eustace was learning to sleep under the stars. At 12 years old, he built his first primitive shelter. No blueprints, no power tools, just instinct and determination. By his teenage years, he was riding horses across entire states, guided only by the sun, the wind, and the terrain beneath him. His life was never about rebellion. It was about alignment. Alignment with nature, with simplicity, with the old ways that modern society had forgotten Turtle Island Preserve, became the crown jewel of the vision. Hundreds of acres of raw, living wilderness where people could touch the past with their own hands. Visitors learned to build fires without matches, craft tools from stone, and see the world without the noise of engines, clocks, or screens. To Eustace, Turtle Island wasn't a business. It was a sanctuary, a place where he could teach, protect, and preserve a culture vanishing faster every year. But even as he embraced solitude, the outside world kept closing in. Curious, skeptical, and often confused by the idea of a man choosing to live outside the rules everyone else accepted. He wasn't trying to be different. He simply was. The last American frontiersman, living in a modern age that didn't know what to do with him. When mountain men first reached out to Eustace, the idea sounded harmless. Show the world how he lived, teach lost skills, inspire others to reconnect with nature. But with fame came a new kind of invasion, one Eustace was never prepared for. At first it was small, a few fans driving up the long gravel road just to see where he lived. Then more came. Some stayed too long, some wandered onto trails they didn't understand. Others stepped past warning signs, mistaking Turtle Island for a public attraction instead of a fragile preserve. People treated his home like a national park, a filming location, a backdrop for their selfies. Fame, he would later admit, was a visitor that didn't know how to leave. Filming brought its own burdens. Crews needed lighting, staging, movement, drama. But Eustace didn't stage anything. He didn't rehearse, didn't perform, didn't play to the camera. His life was real, and real life doesn't care about TV schedules. While the crew filmed, projects stalled, classes were interrupted, animals needed care, storms rolled in, responsibilities doubled, fans showed up unannounced, vehicles clogged paths meant for horses, tourists wandered into dangerous areas. The quiet he once relied on became a luxury he could no longer afford. For a man who sought solitude, fame became something else entirely. A predator that tracked every step, waited at every boundary, and demanded more every season. The first real battles didn't start with fans or fame. They started with the county office. One morning, inspectors arrived with clipboards, cameras, and a stack of paperwork. They weren't there to learn or appreciate his way of living. They were there to measure it, judge it, and regulate it. They questioned the buildings he'd crafted by hand. They scrutinized the timber frame structures made from fallen trees. They asked whether his traditional methods met modern code. To Eustace, these weren't simple compliance questions. They were threats. Every inspection felt like the world telling him he was wrong for living differently. Zoning officials pointed to lines on maps. Neighbors filed complaints about boundaries and property use. Some claimed his cabins weren't up to standard. Others said Turtle Island was growing too fast or drawing too many visitors. Every letter from the county cut like a blade. Every demand for upgrades felt like an attempt to erase the old ways he fought to preserve his buildings weren't violations. They were classrooms. His shelters weren't unsafe. They were built stronger than most modern homes, but the system didn't care about tradition, only procedures. The disputes grew louder. The pressure mounted. At times, Eustace was forced to halt classes, cancel events, and redirect all his energy into meetings, hearings, and negotiations that dragged on for months. To the outside world, it was just paperwork. To Eustace, it was the beginning of a war over the soul of Turtle Island. The legal battles didn't come as a single blow. They came as a slow, grinding storm. At first, Eustace believed the disputes would settle themselves, that reason would win out, that officials would recognize Turtle Island as a place of learning, not a business to dissect. But months turned into years, and each passing season brought more paperwork, more hearings, more demands that pulled him away from the very land he was fighting to protect. There were days when classes had to be halted because inspectors showed up without warning. Days when volunteers arrived eager to help, only to find Eustace sitting at a table covered in documents instead of guiding them through the forest nights, when he returned to the cabin exhausted not from work, but from arguing definitions, codes, and regulations with people who didn't understand his way of life. The county's shutdown order hit hardest. In a single moment, Turtle Island, his living classroom, his life's purpose, was declared non-compliant. Students couldn't come, programs were canceled, donations slowed, bills didn't. The preserve felt unnaturally quiet, as if even the woods sensed the tension hanging in the air. He hired lawyers, though the idea of paying someone to explain his lifestyle to a courtroom felt absurd. The legal fees stacked higher than any woodpile he'd ever built, and still, he refused to compromise the soul of Turtle Island. He would bring things to code where possible, but he would not turn his sanctuary into a bureaucratic checklist. Every document, every motion, every signature pulled him further from the forest and deeper into a world he never wanted to enter. It wasn't the physical labor breaking him. It was the emotional toll of defending something that should never have required defending. In his words, I was spending more time in courtrooms than in the woods. That's when I knew something had to change. As the legal storm swirled, another shadow began creeping toward Turtle Island. One born from whispers, speculation, and the dangerous power of rumor. In the mountains surrounding the preserve, hikers occasionally became lost, injured, or disoriented. It happened for decades before Eustace ever set foot there. Rugged terrain, sudden storms, and that was the reality of wilderness. But reality didn't matter online. Whenever someone went missing anywhere within miles of his land, internet sleuths, blog writers, and rumor-hungry locals sometimes dragged Turtle Island's name into the conversation. A few twisted the stories, claiming connections that didn't exist. Some confused the region's general wilderness with his actual preserve. Others simply used his notoriety from mountain men to fuel dramatic theories. Eustace was never accused of wrongdoing, not once. Yet the rumors created an atmosphere he never asked for. Increased patrols, unexpected knockings on his door, helicopters sweeping the ridges, and strangers showing up asking questions that made no sense. Worst of all were the unannounced search parties. Well-meaning, but misguided. They walked onto his land during active classes, spooking visitors, and disrupting the peaceful quiet he worked so hard to maintain. They weren't looking for trouble, but trouble always followed when fear took the wheel. Eustace could feel the pressure tightening. It wasn't anger he felt, it was sadness. Sadness that his home, his sanctuary, was becoming a magnet for suspicion simply because it was remote, silent, and easy to blame. When people vanish in the wilderness, he once said, the nearest landmark becomes the first suspect. Even when the truth cleared the air, the damage lingered. Rumors, once born, rarely die. While the lawsuits and rumors swirled outside Turtle Island, a different kind of pressure was building inside it. One that came from the very show that introduced Eustace to millions of viewers. At first, the partnership with mountain men felt natural. They wanted authenticity. He lived authenticity. But as the seasons passed, the line between storytelling and real life began to blur. Filming schedules clashed with daily responsibilities. Crews wanted moments of tension, conflict, and triumph, all captured within tight production windows. But the wilderness doesn't work on a schedule. Sometimes a task that looked simple on camera required days of preparation. Other times the weather turned, animals needed care, or students depended on him. Real life wasn't dramatic enough for TV, and TV wasn't patient enough for real life. Small disagreements emerged. Producers pushed for bigger moments. Eustace pushed back, wanting honesty over spectacle. Scenes were delayed, tempers flared. The crew sometimes grew frustrated when Eustace prioritized actual emergencies. A broken fence, an injured animal, a sudden storm, overplanned shots. Then came the fatigue, the constant presence of cameras, the sense that every action needed to be explained, justified, or performed for an audience he never asked for. He wasn't angry at the crew, many of them respected him deeply. But the weight of performing while maintaining a preserve grew heavier every year. Visitors interrupted takes. Tourists wandered into scenes. Helicopters from search teams buzzed overhead. Inspectors arrived during filming. Everything collided. The tension wasn't explosive. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow, quiet erosion. The kind that wears down mountains over time. Eustace didn't blame the show, but he could feel it pulling him away from the life he was trying to protect. There wasn't one single catastrophe that broke Eustace Conway. It was a slow accumulation of moments, frustrations, and invasions that finally pushed him past his limits. The breaking point came quietly, disguised as an ordinary day. It began with legal threats waiting in his mailbox. A new notice, more demands, more deadlines. Before he could even process it, a county inspector's truck rolled down the gravel path, arriving unannounced, clipboard in hand. He was in the middle of teaching a class, guiding students through fire-making techniques, when he saw the vehicle pulling up. The students watched as he tried to balance two worlds, one rooted in ancient wisdom, the other suffocating him with bureaucracy. The inspector wanted immediate access to structures, water systems, and paperwork. He hadn't even had time to complete because filming had swallowed his week. Then the cameras arrived, demanding shots for the day's schedule. Tasks staged at the worst possible time. A crew member asked for a repeat take of a scene where Eustace chopped wood, even though a real emergency needed his attention. A fence had collapsed in the night, and animals needed securing before they wandered onto the road. As he tended to the fence, he caught sight of strangers standing beyond the tree line. Fans who had slipped onto the property, hoping for pictures. Unaware of the danger, they ignored signs, ignored boundaries, and ignored his requests to stay back. Everything collided in a single hour. The inspector's questions, the fans' intrusion, the crew's pressure, the paperwork piling up, the fragile classes disrupted once again. He later described that day with one sentence. That was the day the wilderness stopped feeling like home. Not because the land turned against him, but because the world refused to leave him alone long enough to breathe. When Eustace finally stepped away from Mountain Men, there was no dramatic farewell, no public announcement, no final monologue for the cameras. It was a retreat as subtle and natural as the turning of a season. Viewers didn't realize it at first. Fans wondered why he appeared less. Online threads asked if he was taking time off. But behind the scenes, his decision had already been made. He drifted slowly out of the show's orbit, like a bird peeling away from a noisy flock to glide into quieter skies. Some weeks, he filmed less, other weeks. Not at all. The crew noticed his growing distance. Not anger, not bitterness, just exhaustion. He became harder to reach. Schedules slipped. Calls went unanswered. Turtle Island, once filled with cameras and gear, felt strangely peaceful as production days dwindled. Fans would later piece it together. One season, he was central. The next, he was absent. The show moved forward without him, because preventing his departure wasn't an option. His life was the woods, not Hollywood. Away from the spotlight, Eustace began spending more time in the deeper reaches of Turtle Island, areas few visitors ever saw. He rebuilt trails, repaired shelters, tended gardens, sat beside streams, in silence. He reconnected with the land the way he did before fame came knocking. Those closest to him said he looked lighter, calmer, more rooted. Without cameras, without deadlines, without the chaos of public curiosity, Eustace returned to the rhythm that had guided him his entire life. Some men leave the spotlight loudly. Eustace walked until it disappeared behind him. The truth, when Eustace finally shared it, wasn't filled with anger or regret. It wasn't a condemnation of the show or the people who worked on it. Instead, it was quiet, humble, and deeply personal. A reflection of who he's always been. In a rare moment of openness, he explained, "I didn't leave because of the show. I left because the world was pulling me away from the man I'm supposed to be." That sentence echoed through the community of fans who had followed his journey from the beginning. It wasn't conflict that drove him away. It was clarity. The clarity that his purpose wasn't to entertain millions, but to protect the small piece of earth he had devoted his life to. Turtle Island wasn't just a preserve. It was the physical expression of his soul. Every lawsuit, every inspection, every rumor, every uninvited visitor chipped away at the peace he needed to thrive. The show amplified everything, the good and the bad, until the noise became too loud to ignore. He made his final decision alone, walking the boundary of Turtle Island at sunrise. The land was covered in fog, the woods damp and quiet. He realized he stood at a crossroads: continue fighting the forces pulling him away from his purpose, or return fully to the life he had built long before cameras found him. He chose the mountains. He chose the quiet. He chose the version of himself untouched by fame, lawsuits, or conflict. In the end, Eustace didn't leave Mountain Men. He simply walked back into the wilderness, the only place he ever truly belonged.